Oh boy, Nikki. So, I accidentally blew up my computer trying to make my TV work. Uh, back hundreds of millions of years ago in 2009 or so, I used to watch movies on my TV from my computer by connecting them with a cable. But when I installed Windows 7, that whole thing stopped working. And so I was like, well, I'll just go back to Windows XP eventually if I really care. And I didn't care for so long. It's been like 3 years. But now I finally decided, you know what? I assumed eventually Windows 7 would support my TV, but since they never did, I'm just going to go back to XP, and then I'll be able to keep doing everything I was able to do before and use my TV. And, because operating system's almost irrelevant. But just before that, I'd bought a faster hard drive so that I could watch replays at 8x speed without it being all choppy like it is right now. So I'd moved everything related to StarCraft over to that second drive, like all of my videos, all of my replays, and stuff like that. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to install XP, I should just unplug my primary drive and install XP on the secondary drive on a second partition. But I accidentally installed it on the main partition that had all my StarCraft stuff on it. So all my StarCraft stuff disappeared, and that's like a pain in the butt. So I spent like 15 hours reinstalling all my programs and trying to get freaking recording software to work, right? Because all of the codecs are on different version levels now than they were when I set it up before, and none of it works, and it's always so frustrating. Like, yeah, sure, everything always works out of the box. It always records, but why is it limiting itself to 5 FPS? And why is it so choppy? And why is there vertical lines through it? And why is this problem? And so, I solve one problem after another until finally I've solved all the stupid problems. And it still doesn't work. And I just freaking couldn't get XSplit or Taxi or Virtual Dub or VH whatever to record properly. Even though I backed out Windows XP and just plugged in my primary drive again. And just ridiculous. So, most frustrating crap ever. But on top of that, about, 40 hours of pre-recorded videos are all disappeared as well. So, everything I do from now on will have to be brandy new. So, Nick and I run Dropbox, and we drop we synchronize our replay folder so that we have one universal replay folder between the two of us. And the advantage this gives me is that I can steal videos from him without asking. So I just loaded the last TVT he played, and that's what this is. So this is not a replay he sent me to be cast. This is probably a replay he wishes I wouldn't cast. But ta-da! So he's doing the build that we always do in TVT, where you go fast expansion into 4 racks, and then you quickly take double gas or quadruple gas. He takes quadruple gas, I take double gas. You poke with your first 10 Marines, because if he's tacking too quickly, you can sometimes catch him off guard and kill lots of stuff. Nick's actually won several games just with that 10 Marine poke. But most often, you poke with the 10 Marines, you see that he has Marines, and you walk home. So now this massive amount of gas is going to allow him to go double eBay and get a tech lab, and he's going to work on stim and +1/+1 as quick as he can. The problem with getting double gas so quickly, I'm going to break camera lock for a second and show you, is that he's not fully saturated on minerals, right? So the way I like to play this build is to really emphasize mineral income, because minerals determine how many racks you can have, how many Marines you can make, how many, whether or not you can afford SCVs, whether or not you get supply blocked, how quickly you can afford your third base, all that kind of stuff. So, going for the quadruple gas so early is, even though they both have the same number of workers, it's going to give Nick a kind of mineral disadvantage and give his opponent a mineral lead and a gas detriment. Now, having more gas quicker, of course, is going to let Nick get medevacs quicker, and medevacs and upgrades combined quicker. Because the first 100 gas is going to go towards stim, and then +1, and then +1, and then factory, and then medevac. And so Nick is going to have more gas-related stuff, whereas his opponent's going to have more mineral-related stuff. But they're both doing a primarily Marine-based build. They're doing a mirror of each other. And they're just emphasizing Marines like crazy. So this is the heavy marine play with a smattering of medevacs and a smattering of tanks. And so when both sides are going heavy marine, whoever gets more marines is going to have a pretty significant lead. So now that that's said, another like basically what it usually comes down to when you're both going for lots of income and lots of marines, whoever has the SCV lead because they didn't supply block. Like right now, Blue has a 7-worker lead just because Nick's cutting workers by accident. He didn't expand quicker. He didn't do anything different. Nick is accidentally cutting workers, and he has plenty of money. There's no reason to be cutting workers, and it's just he's doing it by accident. Like right now, he hasn't been building a worker forever. So Blue's getting way ahead on his income there. And the next thing that it often comes down to, right? If you get a worker lead, your income is only going to be bigger than your opponent's until you both hit 52. Because now 60 versus 50, they both have max saturation on 2 bases. Now, obviously, Nick missaturated. What the heck is wrong with my computer? Stop going so damn slow. So he has not enough guys here and too many guys here. So he's actually got a slightly less income than his opponent. But once you both hit 52, the next big advantage comes from who takes their third quicker. So at this point, Mr. Blue, they both spent the same amount of money on army and tech. Nick actually spent a little bit more on tech, and he had a little bit of advantage, 1-1 versus 0-1. But the arc was really bad for Nick. Nick is like hugging this wall while his opponent is spread out in a big arc. And also Nick, I believe, had a lot fewer marines. So this is 2 pages and just missing 6 from this next page. And Nick's short 4 marines, and this is because Nick came to him. This is just defender's advantage. They have basically almost the same number of marines, but in this specific fight, Nick is going to have a worse arc and fewer marines, but an upgrade advantage. They both stim. Prodigy has more medevacs, but that really doesn't matter in marine versus marine battles because the DPS of marines is so damn high. And Nick just loses out, but just barely. So he comes out of that fight $500 behind. But the big deal is that this third is going to go up way quicker for Prodigy than for Nick, and he's building it in place like a man with ball sack instead of not building it in place like Nick. And Prodigy's making 7 marines at a time, while Nick is making 6. They're both getting tanks. They're both getting upgrades. Nick is working on a 2, I believe, 2-2 upgrade advantage. This is weird that these two things are not the same color. They're normally the same color. So until that upgrade advantage finishes, Nick is going to have a much weaker army because he's trading marines for an upgrade advantage. But more importantly, Nick really cut workers at 52. He just wants to be 2 base max saturation, and he's fine with that. Unfortunately, the saturation is really light. Like, look at that. He's got 16 on each. And that's like the very softest of soft cap. Like, usually 18 or 20 is actual soft cap, whereas 30 is hard cap. So yeah, Nick just is pulling a lot less money out. He's got 1,000 versus 2,000. But part of that's not dropping mules. Part of that is that not only did he stop at soft cap saturation, but now he completely pulled even more away. So just Nick is letting this go to the crows. Go to the crows on economy alone. And as time continues to move, and this guy continues to emphasize minerals and racks and marines, and Nick continues to emphasize gas and tanks and medevacs and upgrades, while cutting his army, eventually it's just going to snowball out of control. And these fast expand versus fast expand, marine versus marine games often end up like this. One guy gets a minor economic detriment that just snowballs because more minerals means more quicker command center, means more marines, means you win a fight, means so on and so forth. It just kind of snowballs out of control, and eventually it's no dice. So even though Nick has spent all his money and Prodigy has not, the army size at this point is 86 marines to 56, 7 tanks to 4, 4 medevacs to 7. Just Prodigy has a much bigger army, and there's nothing Nick can do at this point. So unluckily, also, we have a positional problem here. Prodigy is attacking Nick, and Nick doesn't see it coming. And he's going to be on Nick's third before Nick can respond. And Nick was just loading up a medevac drop to go drop Prodigy's third. And so he goes, oh no, you're on my third, I have to engage. So these are unsieged tanks. Prodigy actually hits the siege button before Nick does. And Prodigy has 87 Marines versus Nick's 56. And Nick has a bunch of Marines loaded into medevacs that he was about to do a drop with. He's got a bunch of army out of position here. And I'm sure at this point Nick is like, oh, I'm screwed. That was just really bad luck. So even though he probably would have lost the game anyway because of his huge dollar sign detriment, Prodigy really had to engage right here and make it count, because he just hit 200 unit space. From this moment on, even though Nick has less money and less infrastructure, he's catching up, and Nick was only about 2 minutes from hitting 200 U of his own. And so yeah, if Nick had had his 7 tanks pre-siege and Prodigy had walked into him and been forced to retreat, and Nick could buy enough time to get to 200 unit space, this would have been a much different story. But at this point, billion medevacs, billion Marines sitting on your production infrastructure, game's over. There's nothing you can do from there. So I love TVT lately because it's this mirror build. This build has become so prominent that it just becomes a matter of who does it better. Like you kind of go into it saying, okay, everyone's going to do the same build, and now it's just a question of who does it better. And there are some other builds, but all the other builds like Banshee Tank Push, all the other builds except for like a Banshee Tank Push or a Marine Hellion Elevator or like a super quick bio all-in, they get destroyed by this, and that's why it's become so popular, is because it beats a lot of the things that Terrans used to do. So yeah.